Chemical hazards are substances that can cause a variety of harm to people working in close proximity to such chemicals. The effects can vary depending on the type of chemical present, but in the histopathology laboratory, most of these chemical hazards pose significant health risk for workers with either acute or chronic exposure. Health effects range from mild skin irritation to serious health effects, such as cancer or organ system damage. So, it is very important that proper labels are placed in the storage and containers of chemicals. The purpose is to provide proper and sufficient information regarding the adverse effects of each chemicals being used in the histopathology laboratory and how to handle them without causing too much harm to the workers. The labeling systems utilized for such hazards is the Globally Harmonized System, which is a standardized system that addresses the potential risk of chemicals being handled by using various visual cues such as pictograms to indicate the type of hazards it can pose and statements and signals words to give in the details the hazards identify. Another labeling system is the National Fire Protection Association labeling system, which is a diamond shape that is divided into four quadrants labeled with different colors to indicate different hazards, such as blue for health hazard, red for flammability, yellow for reactivity/instability, and white for special hazards, as well as placing numbers with 0 as the lowest and 4 as the highest to indicate their severity in that particular quadrant. And here are the different chemical hazards. Formaldehyde. Formaldehyde exists as a colorless, strong-smelling gas and is the simplest aldehyde to be formed. It is widely used in histopathology in the form of formalin, which is the aqueous form of formaldehyde. It is a preservative and a fixative. Its mechanism in the histopathology lab is preserving the morphology and integrity of tissue samples, allowing for clear microscope examination as well as wide staining. Its label on the NFPA is 320, none which indicates it can cause significant health risk, is a moderate fire hazard, stable under normal condition, and has no specific hazards in its standard concentration. On the GHS label, it is non-carcinogen and can cause respiratory, skin, and eye irritation if the body is exposed as indicated by the health and exclamation mark pictograms, respectively. Using PPE and proper ventilation is required when handling formaldehyde. It is also flammable, indicated by the flame pictogram, and it is also corrosive to the skin as indicated by the corrosive pictogram. Storage of formaldehyde should be kept in flammable storage cabinet with proper ventilation to avoid accumulation of fumes as well as temperature range being 15 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius and kept in a large container.
Next, we have xylene. Xylene is an aromatic hydrocarbon used as a clearing agent in tissue processing, which makes tissue sample transparent and allows paraffin wax infiltration for microtome slicing into sections for microscopic examinations. The NFPA labels for xylene are as follows: 2:3:0, none which indicates that acute exposure causes temporary and residual health risks. Xylene is also flammable even at low temperatures and stable, non-reactive in normal conditions. For the GHS, xylene is highly flammable indicated by the flame pictogram, while it causes health risks such as skin, eye, and respiratory irritations as well as organ toxicity and damage for chronic exposure as indicated by the exclamation mark and health hazard pictogram respectively. Storage of xylene should be kept in a flammable liquid storage cabinet with proper ventilation to avoid accumulation of fumes as well as temperature range being stably at 15 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius and kept in a large container. The cabinet must be at eye level to avoid spills when taking the container from the cabinet. Next, we have our alcohol-based chemicals. Alcohols such as ethanol have a role in the histopathologic section, primarily in the dehydration process, as ethanol can remove water in tissue sample to allow embedding process of paraffin wax. Its ideal concentration is actually at 70% to 100%. The NFPA rating for ethanol is at 2 is to 3 is to 0, not in which ethanol has moderate health hazards. The only notable risk is its effect to intoxicate workers even in its vapor form. It is also highly flammable in both its liquid and vapor form at ambient temperature conditions, especially in the presence of sparks, open flames, and hot surfaces, and is stable and does not react violently with water. The GHS label for ethanol is the flame pictogram indicating flammability, since ethanol has also been used as a chemical reagent for Molotovs, and the exclamation mark indicating its potential acute toxicity and organ toxicity, particularly the brain and the liver. Storage for such chemicals must be placed in flammable storage cabinets similarly to our xylene, with proper ventilation to avoid build-up of fumes, and with the temperature of only 15 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius, and being segregated away from acids, oxidizers, and subreagents, with amount not exceeding at 10 gallons exactly.
Hematoxylin and eosin stain or H&E stain. Hematoxylin is a dye derived from logwood tree and stains acidic components a blue to dark purple coloration, such as genetic material, since they contain nucleic acids. Eosin, on the other hand, is a synthetic dye that binds to alkaline cellular components and stains the cytoplasm and its components in shades of pink to red. For the NFPA rating of hematoxylin are as follows: 2, 1, 0, none, in which its health hazard can only cause temporary minor injuries. It is also a slight hazard to flammability because it needs to be preheated before ignition can occur, as well as being stable in normal conditions as well as fire exposure. While the NFPA rating for eosin are as follows: 1, 1, 0, none. Its health hazard only gives irritation or minor residual injury. It is also a slight hazard in being flammable, as it also needs to be preheated before ignition can occur. And it is also stable under normal conditions as well as fire exposure. For the GHS label, hematoxylin and eosin only causes irritation, skin sensitization, and specific organ toxicity, as indicated by the exclamation mark pictogram. Precautions of any possible exposure include hand washing, wearing PPE, and proper ventilation. For storage, H&E stain must be stored in an amber-colored bottle because these two dyes are easily degraded by light and must be stored in room temperature of about 15 to 25 degrees Celsius and regularly checked for signs of change. Lastly, we have the paraffin wax. Paraffin wax is an essential component in the histopathology laboratory, as it is used in tissue embedding before being sectioned into thin slices by a microtome of about 3 to 5 micrometers thick, to be mounted on glass slides and stained for microscopic examination. Advantages of using paraffin is that it preserves the structure of the tissue sample. Because of this, solidified embedded tissue samples can be cut with ease and without distortions, giving accurate and quality microscope examinations. Embedded tissue samples can also be stored for long periods, enabling prolonged examination and still provide accurate diagnosis. For the NFPA rating, paraffin is generally safe because of its low reactivity and its moderate hazard levels. The rating are as follows: 1, 1, 0, none, as it causes only irritation and minor residual injury as other chemicals mentioned here used in histopathology laboratory. It is also slightly combustible as it requires preheating before any ignition can occur, and is a minimal hazard as it is generally unreactive in normal conditions, even with fire exposure and water exposure. For its GHS labels, there are generally no pictograms indicating specific hazards of paraffin wax because it is a low hazardous profile and only causes skin and eye irritation, especially in its liquid or molten form. Inhaling also its dust or fumes can cause respiratory irritation. Proper course of action when handling paraffin is wearing PPE, such as gloves, working in a well-ventilated area, and washing the hands thoroughly after handling the paraffin wax. So the storage for paraffin wax should be in a cool and dry environment with the temperature below its melting point of 46 to 68 degrees Celsius, depending on the type of paraffin, and stored in a non-reactive container like glass containers with proper labels.